Oh my goodness, what a nice day. Well, it's only been a few days since my last confession, but I feel like I got some new things to confess. So I had this thing running yesterday, and the computer bypass is still working. The security bypass is still working. And today I got the drive shaft from my old 95 Firebird, and it fit like a glove. So that's the factory shaft out of the 83. So I took the drive shaft out of the 95, the 4th gen, and it just fit. It just bolted right in, fits nicely. Got the accessories and belt on. Found a smaller alternator. Got custom made kick down cable setup and bracket. Found a drive shaft and put a drive shaft in it. Put a transmission dipstick in there. Yeah, getting some things accomplished a little bit at a time. Had it running again, and that's good, because I had people ask about the security bypass and the battery and blah blah blah. Every time this bird chirps, it sings a different song. It makes a different noise every time. Now that the drive shaft is in and transmission fluid and it's running, I would put it in gear because I want to try out the transmission, but no, I don't think there's nuts on none of the mounts, so I better not put it in gear just yet. But she made some progress. Tail wagger. Oh yeah, you're such a photogenic beast. Oh yeah. When I put the mounts, the lower rubber half of the mounts, when I put them down through the frame or the subframe, I didn't put the nuts on the bottom. So the day has come where I need to actually get underneath and actually put the nuts on. And this might be the hardest part of the whole swap, because they're sort of, the suspension, the lower control arm is right there, and yeah, it's not easy. I've done this once before, I think on the 87 I did this before, and it's not fun. It's a really tight spot. So I got 3/8 flange nuts, and I'll probably put some Loctite on them just in case. I'm going to put a magnet up top here. I'm usually doing this DIY stuff. DIY stands for do it yourself. It'd be nice to have somebody to hold this from spinning, but I'm going to stick a magnet on there. These should spin on pretty easy, even with Loctite on them. Worst case scenario, I can clamp the vice grips on the head of the bolt. I can still get at the head of the bolt here. I'm going to be using a flange head type nut. These two from the positive on the battery, but the smaller one here, it used to come across, it was kind of short. It's still the same length, but it used to go here to this fuse block. So I ran that wire to the back of the alternator because it reaches there pretty good. And then I ran another wire from the back of the alternator down here, so that'll help my wire my alternator, because the alternator needed to be wired anyway, and it'll give me a little more room over here while my wiring, a little more wiggle room. So over here on the passenger side, that's the idler there for the steering, and there's two bolts. One is behind that rad hose, but there's two bolts there, and it just bolts. There's like a slot there, so that you can actually see the slot now. You couldn't see it before because it was up higher, so I just loosened those bolts and slotted it down, which moves the center link down a little bit. It's a lot more neat across the front now that there's no wire coming across to the fuse block anymore. I know this is still a mess here, but the fuel lines are just temporary, and the wire needs to be loomed, and the fuse block, it'll be bolted down, or I might use the bracket from the actual Chevy truck. Oh my goodness, what a nice day. It's the first day that I'm in the tank top and the baseball cap. The wind is gonna cock over my audio as usual. How you doing, buddy? This is like the perfect time of the year because there's no black flies quite yet. It's nice and sunny today.
Don't have to worry about ticks.
Yeah, the bugs aren't quite out yet. Well, it's only been a few days since my last confession, but I feel like I got some new things to confess. I got the power steering line on. I got the center link dropped via the idler arm. Got the drive shaft in. Got the alternator wiring figured out. Very soon I'm gonna have to put the steering shaft back into it. There's no steering shaft in there at all right now. And the fuel delivery, I've been running this temporary fuel system just sitting here, and I run it down into a standalone fuel tank. So I'm gonna have to sort out the fuel lines and the fuel pump, so hopefully it can run on its own tank. Well, that's the reservoir off the 95 Firebird. So it seems to fit the big hose. The only thing about this is it has an extra return on it. I like it because it's plastic. The one off the van was steel and rusty. So I just got it sort of zip tied to that bracket right now, but I think I can make my own bracket and maybe keep it down low below the alternator. But for now, I'm going to fire it up. It's a lot neater across here. There's no wires going across here now. So I'm going to test the alternator and make sure that it's charging. This will be the first time that the battery charges, if the alternator's any good. I'm going to test the power steering pump. I've got both lines hooked up now, and the reservoir. So there's pressure line, return line, and reservoir. So I'm going to fire it up real quick. Make sure there's no problems. Make sure there's no fluids flying. Maybe I guess I can't test the power steering because the steering shaft's not hooked up. But I'll just make sure the fluids don't come out. Test the alternator. Fire it up. I think I can put it in gear. No, transmission mount's not tight. I don't know. We'll see. I've got the battery charger on it right now, but if it charges with the alternator, I'll probably take that off. Well, she's charging all by herself. Got the changed hats wet with the weather. No more toque. I just put her in gear for the first time when it was running, and it tried to go, I was holding the brakes on with no vacuum booster, and it tried to go backwards, but the ramps will hold it, and I put it in drive, and it tried to go forward, but the brakes were holding it, so that's good. So the transmission wants to go forward and backwards. I'm not ready to go forward and backwards yet, but it wants to go. Well, the alternator seems to be charging. That's good, I guess. I'm not sure if it's killing the battery or not, but maybe the battery died when I was working on it or something. I don't know. I was working on the power wires for the alternator and fuse block. So the routing is slowly getting better. The wiring is slowly getting better. The power steering doesn't seem to be leaking. I've got the power line and the return line both hooked up, so that's good. It's going to be nice having the alternator working, because I've been constantly running battery chargers and my battery died last night, and if everything works out from here on out, hopefully it'll charge itself now.